Well, welcome everyone, and thank you all for being here. Rachel and I are excited to get our session started. And before we jump in, we just want to say, since we're at the Library Publishing Forum, we're obviously going to talk about library publishing. And today our session really focuses on how we can't do everything. So we're asking the question, should we just quit? So before we get into the meat of our session, we want to go over the agenda and what you can expect today. So we're going to briefly do introductions in our next slide. And then we just wanted to talk about this polling component that we're going to do. So both Rachel and I are trying out something new. We wanted to include a few polls throughout our sessions. So we're using Zoom's polling component to just make things a little bit more interactive and engaging. So we prepared about 5 different polls for you to respond to as we go through our session today, and we'll be able to share the results with you in real time and as we go through our session. So the focus of our session is really on assessing where we are at with our journal publishing program. So we'll plan to walk you through some background information, what we found when we were doing some research, and then we'll explain the model that we came up with, and then finally we'll wrap it up and share some of our conclusions, and then hopefully we'll have enough time at the end to take some questions. So with that, we'll move into some introductions. So Rachel, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Rachel Molina. I'm the Digital Publishing and Repository Librarian at IU Indianapolis. Of the 3 of us that did this, I am the newest. I started this position in November. So everything about library publishing is brand new to me, outside of what I learned in school, of course. And this is also my first presentation at a conference, so I'm happy to be here.
So I'll go next. I'm Olivia MacIsaac, and I have a really long title like Rachel. So I'm the Research Information Management Librarian at IU Indianapolis. So in my role, my responsibilities are tied to supporting and advocating for research information systems and approaches that enable the use of persistent digital identifiers, or PIDs, and other technologies that contribute to open resource for research. So for context for this presentation, when our former director of the Center for Digital Scholarship, who is also our digital publishing librarian, left, I took on some of the responsibilities related to our open access journal programming at IU Indianapolis as we searched for his replacement, i.e. Rachel. And then lastly, we have our colleague, Jere Odell. Jere was not able to present with us today, but he's been integral to the work related to library publishing on our campus, and has some institutional knowledge and memory that Rachel and I don't have. So currently Jere serves as, I'm going to say, new director in the Center for Digital Scholarship, and he is also our scholarly communication librarian. So that's who we all are. And this really lets us move on into our first poll that we want to do. So we just want to go ahead and let me see. I'm going to launch the first poll now. All right, so I launched the first poll. So we just want to know why you attended the session. And this is the long answer. Oh, this is interesting. Let us know if you attended this session because you're interested in learning how to maybe quit or do less, or if you're interested in doing less, or if you're at your wit's end, or if all those options apply to you, let us know. And if there's another reason, also feel free to put it in the poll as well. So I'll give folks a couple of seconds to answer the poll. They're slowly coming in. There's 59 of us here today. So maybe when we get up to 30%, I'll close it. So 5 more seconds, guys. All right, I'm going to end it. and I'm gonna share the results. So the results are shared with you. For some reason, I can't see them. Can you see them,
I
Rachel?
can't see them either.
Oh no, is it not working? Ah, interesting. Let me stop sharing. Let me go back. Oh, dang it. Maybe the polls aren't working.
They are working. If you click on stop sharing, do you see a share results?
Yes. Someone said that they couldn't see the poll either. Maybe it's not working. And if that's the case,
Click
if
on view
folks,
details. When you click on share results, it will just show a bar that shows the people have responded, but if there's just a show details link in there. View details.
I'm not seeing that, Nancy. Kate said in the chat, maybe you can only see results for long answers after the meeting, which could make sense. Yes, and when we originally had the polls, we had multiple choice, so this is a little bit different.
Oh, I'm
I-
sorry, I didn't see the multiple choice.
No, you're totally fine. If folks want to put their answers in the chat, and from there we can just see what folks have said, that would be helpful. We have one. New to publishing, want to learn. Love that. So I don't give up. Also love that. All right. And said I had a sense that we have shared experiences. We probably all are in similar boats. And trying to avoid doing everything. Yes. Awesome. Thank you guys for pivoting and throwing that into the chat. This is very helpful. Yes. Yay, okay, awesome. Thank you all. So feel free to continue to throw things in chat about why you attended this session. Sorry that the poll didn't work, but things that are being thrown in the chat are great. So I appreciate you sharing your answers there. But this really gives us an idea of who all is in the same boat as us. We've been feeling the strain on resources around library publishing for a while, at least at our institution. And the thought of doing less seems really exciting to us. So it's interesting to see how many folks feel similarly to us. So let me go on to the next slide. So we're gonna transition into moving on into the background information, just to share more about our library publishing program at our institution. So the journal publishing program on our campus started in 2008. So we should mention we were formerly known as IUPUI, and since July 1st, 2024, at least our university has undergone a split, a divorce, whatever you want to call it. So we are now under the umbrella or the new university, IU Indianapolis, and this is where our services lie on our campus. So since 2008, we've steadily seen the number of journals we have host increase, and right now we are hosting 27 journals on our instance of OJS. And then in terms of people supporting this initiative on our campus, it has changed over time, but right now we have one full-time employee who oversees it all, so that's Rachel. And then we have 4 other individuals in the university library that contribute to the services related to this program. So since 2008, the number of librarians and library staff at our institution has started to decrease. So you can see in this graph here that in 2008, 2009, we had about a 93, 94 employees in the library. And then over time, that number has just started to shift downwards. So in 2004, we are now at 67 employees, so we have about 26, 27 employees less. So with this decrease in our workforce, we have started to see an increase in our workflows as employees have started to juggle multiple responsibilities and services underneath their titles. So knowing this really fueled our desire to reassess our journal publishing program to look at what was working and what we could stop doing. And having Rachel join the University Library last fall also prompted this work forward, and we're really happy she joined the center. So I am going to pass it off to her in this next session, but before we move on, we had a second poll that we wanted you guys to do. And I could try to launch it again. I don't know if I'll have success this time, but we can see, we can all try it
Why don't you
together.
let me try to launch it this time, Olivia, and see if I have better success?
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
At the very least, you guys can see the answers we gave you and you can put them in the chat.
I don't know if the answers are there, Rachel, because I think it says long answers, but
Ah,
what we could do, so I have the answers pulled up that we have chosen, and I'll throw them in the chat. So in the multiple choice that we had for this poll, we wanted to know if you're operating with limited staff, budgets, and time. One, if it was yes, that was the option we wanted to choose. We had this really funny one. So there was a second option: no, library publishing in our institution is highly valued and the budget goes up every year. I would love if people answered with that. And then 3 is I don't really know.
I put the answers in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So if folks want to just answer there, we
Just
can try this poll here too. I don't know, Nancy, if you've had success.
I don't think I do.
It
Okay.
seems like the overwhelming answer is A, or yes, operating with limited everything. Not a single person says that library publishing is highly valued. I'm shocked.
I am also shocked. I guess moving forward with the polls, we'll probably just throw in the multiple choice answers that we came up with originally in the chat, and then we'll kind of operate it like that moving forward, since we're having issues. But we have the questions on the slides, and we'll do it this way. But yes, Rachel's right. It seems like everyone's in the same boat as us. So thank you everyone for answering. I'm going to pass it on to Rachel now to cover the research that we did.
Yeah, so the next section is going to be the research that was conducted prior to creating and implementing our model. So Olivia, you want to go to the next slide? We started with an environmental scan. Here you can see a picture of our library with its residents, our geese. They're here all the time and they are aggressive. We started with an environmental scan looking at the SPARK open investment statements and principles, the LPC ethical framework for library publishing 2.0, which is a mouthful, and also looking at a calculation of our own personal costs versus our current estimated budget. We don't really have an actual number for that. We just kind of did a feel for it. You can go to the next slide. The first thing, comparing similar institutions. So the SPARK open investment statements and principles page, which I put a screenshot of here, has a list of different value statements and policies from institutions around the United States. I also know there were some from Canada as well. So I went through the list and picked out some from similar institutions to us, including Montana State, Iowa State, the University of British Columbia, and Ohio State to look at the differences and similarities between their policies and what ours were at the time. The common themes I found between all of the institutions' open access statements and policies included policy and financial transparency, being scholar-led, having a digital preservation strategy, being mission or values-driven, being interoperable and discoverable online, and meeting legal accessibility standards. The next part was calculating costs. This is a very rough estimate. We tried to look at our operating budget for a year, starting with the cost of labor in time and money. The cost of labor in money is over 30,000 a year. Again, very rough numbers. And that's divided between 5 people. In hours, 4 out of 5 of those people spent between 5 to 10% of their time working in OJS. I am the remaining person, and even though I haven't been here long enough to experience all of our journals publishing, I'm able to estimate that probably about 40% of my time will be spent working with OJS. The cost of maintaining our server space is about $900 a year. We spent approximately $270 on the Crossref plugin so that we can integrate DOIs into our OJS instance. And this is what we paid in 2020. It can be assumed that the cost is about the same for both Crossref, LPC, and the PKP memberships. So for the institutional membership with LPC, it was about $2,000 in 2020, which gave us access to this forum and its resources. And then the PKP plugin for OJS is about $1,000. We've been having issues with our PKP plugin, so it feels like that money is in a liminal space right now, but we're hoping to get it working again soon. Then the next slide. We also did a journal audit, and I'm going to pass this back to Olivia now.
So I'll go over what we did in terms of the journal audit. So the prior digital publishing librarian had created a journal audit back in 2021. So as a group, we decided that we needed to take a look at this document to kind of get a better grasp of what we all had in OJS. So with the journal audit, this allowed us to complete a brief scan of the journals that we currently support using OJS. And this was done internally. So we just used an Excel spreadsheet that allowed us to track activity status, how often a journal was publishing, if they used DOIs or ORCIDs when publishing content, and if the content of the journal was peer reviewed and whether the journal was using the publishing workflow inside of OJS. So this was for review, copy editing, production, and then finally the final step of publication. So by completing a new audit, we were able to make a few updates and add some relevant information that we found was missing. So this is the result of that audit, and you can see we added a little tiny screen capture of the spreadsheet that we're working with, but not all that information is there. So with these results, we found that we currently have about 21 active journals in OJS. And when we say active, we mean that the journal is still publishing content. So we found that we had 8 journals that publish a new issue annually. Then we had 8 journals that publish semi-annually, and then 2 quarterly, and then 3 on a rolling basis. When it came to using the OJS submission workflow, we had about 12 journals that were using it, and then 2 that used it partially. So it didn't go through all the steps, and then 7 in total that did not use it at all, but they were using something like the Quick Submit plugin to get their content into OJS and get it published that way. Then when it came to DOI use, we had about 19 journals that used DOI, while 3 did not take advantage of the service. And this was for a variety of different reasons. For example, we have a lit journal that's first printed, and then they upload that content to OJS. using the Quick Submit plugin, so they opt to not use or assign DOIs in their workflow. So I think the most exciting thing with this audit is that we discovered we have 6 inactive or archived journals. So before the audit, this number was originally 3. But Rachel helped us make the decision to move 3 journals to inactive. And this was due to 2 years or over 2 years of inactivity. Then finally, in the audit that we did, we had a space to track pending and new journals. So before the audit was completed, we had 2 journals that appeared in this tab in our spreadsheet that we used to track what was in OJS. And since then, we've added 1 more. So the total has increased to 3. One thing that I'll note is that currently our journal publishing program has been on pause. So we're not actively marketing the services around this initiative to faculty and different members, a part of our community. But we have found that new journals tend to slip through the cracks, given information about the program is often shared word of mouth. And we receive requests from folks who are interested in using OJS to publish a new journal or to take a journal and move it to our instance of OJS. So that was just a summary of the work that we did in preparation for assessing our library publishing program and the research we did prior to consider making changes. Now we'll move on to our 3rd poll. So I'll throw the question up here. So we just want to ask you, does your library publishing program follow the framework for the library publishing 2.0? And then Rachel just added to the chats the answers that we wanted to share with you that you can select. So if you follow it to a T, let us know. If you follow it somewhat, it'll be B, and then C, I don't know what you're talking about.
And while people answer this, we did have a question in the chat about whether calculating costs was publishing journals only, or if we also did an audit for publishing books or OER. This was only about our journal publishing program. I actually don't know if we have on the Indianapolis campus a book publishing program. Olivia, do you know?
We don't have,
I didn't think so.
monograph, no, but we do publish some OERs, but I think that's in Pressbook, but we did not look at that.
Yeah, that's kind of separate from our journal publishing system. So we just focused on OJS for this.
So it seems like we have a couple of answers from folks in the chat. We have a lot of C's.
A lot of people don't know about them. We're happy to share them with you.
I think it's already shared in the chat. The link
Yes,
was
Melanie
added.
shared them in the chat.
Thank you. And then we've got a couple of B's, so we have somewhat, but no one is following it to a T, which is interesting to hear. So I'm gonna close that poll. But if people still want to put their answers in the chat, feel free to. But we will move on to discussing the model that we develop and are working towards to help us make decisions on what to do when we're deciding to do less. So I'll get us started with this slide. So this relates to 1.1 and the ethical framework for library publishing. So that document that we were referring to. So we were re-examining our values. So our model really begins with this examining of our library's open value statement, which was created and then approved by an internal group known as the Scholarly Communication Advisory Group back in 2019 at our institution. So what you see on this slide is our abridged version of that statement, but we really just want to highlight that we value the use of open licensing, we value content that is available to all. And then in our original statement, We link to another statement by our library that highlights the value and aligns it to diversity. So the statement is still up on our university library website, but we are unaware of what will happen to it given our diversity plan ends in 2025. And with all the changes happening in higher education, the work around diversity seems to get diminished and removed. So we've included it in this abridged version because it's still there, but we don't know what will happen as we start to think about creating a new open value statement. But next in our open value statement, we want to place a heavy emphasis on supporting our community. When we say community, this relates to IU Indianapolis, Central Indiana, and then this investment in our resources. So Rachel mentioned this. So our memberships that we have with Crossref, PKP, and then supporting OJS. Then we really want to create an opportunities with our open value statement to support innovation and learning and scholarship, so supporting different types of research. And then ultimately we want to be transparent in our work. So when we were developing this model, we understood that with our open value statement, there was a need to update this and just kind of re-examine the work that we've done as it relates to the statement. And we know that eventually there will be changes both inside and outside of our control when the statement does ultimately change in the future. So that's why in the future you'll see that we added this note at the end of the slide that we want to add in joy into the statement as it pertains to library staff. And just to sum it up, the statement really led us to develop a criteria to assess our current and future journals that we support through the journal publishing program. So I'll hand it off to Rachel to go over the different parts of the model that we developed.
So the first thing we did was we updated our terms of agreement. This needed to be done regardless of doing this audit and revamping our program anyway, because as we mentioned earlier, our university has gone through a name change in the past year. The terms of agreement have not been updated since 2021, which was pre-IU Purdue splitting and the inaugural year of IU Indianapolis. So at bare minimum, we needed to go through and update our branding language. We took this opportunity to go ahead and also update technical language and to make sure that our terms of agreement aligned with our open access values. We also did not have a minimum re-sign time period, so we decided that we would put in language for re-signing terms of agreement every 5 years, just to make sure that both parties are sticking to the agreement and understand the requirements for each side. And then the next slide is we also did an editor's survey. This was in addition to our internal journal audit. We wanted to check in with the editors of our journals to see how they were feeling both about OJS in general and also our library's support of their publications. The survey was based on a previous editor survey from 2022 that was done by my predecessor. Because I was new to my role, I decided this was a good opportunity to introduce myself to the editors, as well as get information from them. So I decided to frame this survey in the light of making sure I had met everybody and had a solid baseline to work from while taking over my role. I also wanted to know what expectations there were as far as service and establishing a communication line for future questions. So we used Qualtrics to develop this survey. We sent it to all of our journal editors and contacts. And on the next slide, I'll go over those results. So our journal survey received 10 responses out of 24 journals, which is about 48%. Before this survey, 3 of those journals were technically inactive, but hadn't been moved to that category. So I've reflected that in our response rate. This is about the same response rate that my predecessor got when he conducted this survey in 2022. So We didn't get more, but at least we didn't get less. Of the 10 responses, 9 of them identified themselves as editors, while 1 identified as a managing editor. 5 of the respondents were faculty, 3 were staff, and 2 were students. When asked about their use of peer review, 9 said they do use peer review, while 1 did not. Of the 9 that use peer review, 5 of them conduct it through OJS or use something else outside of OJS. When asked about their use of the OJS submission workflow, 6 said that they use it and 4 use something else. Other forms of submission include via email, Scholastica, Submittable, or a combination of all of those. When asked what kind of organization sponsors the work of the journal, 5 said they were an academic unit, 2 said they were a scholarly society, and 3 said other. Those who said other were able to tell us what they would consider themselves, and they said that they were sponsored by non-academic offices such as our Office for Student Affairs, for example, or something outside of scholarship entirely. Next slide. When asked about the type of compensation they receive, if any, for their journal work, 4 said that they did this work voluntarily, 2 are paid via stipend, 3 have this work included as part of their job, which was interesting, and 1 worked on the journal as part of a course release. I'm assuming that was one of the 2 students. When asked about their satisfaction with the OJS workflow, the respondents were split between being extremely and somewhat satisfied. Only 2 said that they were somewhat dissatisfied. Luckily, no one said they were extremely dissatisfied. Comments on the workflow include that while OJS is quirky, they've learned to work with it. They've worked with it for so long that they've gotten used to it. They would like to learn more about the built-in features, but just haven't had the time to. Frustrations included the system being clunky or uneasy to navigate, which is fair, and issues with the email tool and ability to log in. And then moving on to their satisfaction with us as a support system, we asked what they were feeling, and most said they were extremely satisfied. 1 person said they were somewhat satisfied, and 1 said that they were neutral. As a note, the neutral party said that in the notes they missed my predecessor, and he left about a year before I took this position, so I'm not going to take that personally. Comments about their level of satisfaction included that our library team is very responsive and friendly. Next slide. When we asked about why they've chosen to publish with us, most of the respondents noted that they either enjoy the free or no cost option for them, that they wanted some kind of digital preservation of their work, or that they inherited the journal from someone else who made the decision and they just didn't want to change it. Finally, we asked the editors to rank the following factors influencing their open access publishing decisions from most to least important: preservation of scholarship, ease of digital publishing, readers having free access, and an efficient editorial workflow. Almost all respondents agreed that the editorial workflow being efficient was the least important factor for their decision, which is great because I wouldn't consider OJS super efficient, but that's beside the point. Having the majority of respondents choose knowledge over ease of access or work is an encouraging trend for us, especially as we move forward, double checking that our program aligns with our open access values. And we have another poll for you guys. I'll go ahead and put the answers in the chat if Olivia wants to ask the question.
Cool. So since Rachel just went over kind of the survey that we did with our journal editors, we just want to ask the question, how do you evaluate your library publishing program? So Rachel's gonna share the options that we have for you guys to choose from. So select all that apply. I think rubrics is supposed to be B, so just put B. For some reason,
yes.
it appears to C.
Sorry about that.
No, you're totally fine. So we want to know if you're using surveys, questionnaires, rubrics, decision trees, focus groups, observations. If you're using a mix of those different tools, methods, feel free. to share what that mix is. And then for folks in different capacities, you might not know how your program is evaluated, and that's fine, and you can let us know if you don't know.
And Jonah in the chat is asking what we're comparing OJS to in terms of efficiency. Personally, I'm not, because this is the only thing I've used. And I've based whether it's efficient or not just based on the vibes and opinions of people I've talked to who have worked with it. I've only had about 6 months working with it, so I'm willing to reevaluate my stance on whether it's efficient or not. I don't know if that answers your question or if other people have opinions. That's just my take on things.
I guess the one thing I add to what Rachel says, we do have a good chunk of journals who are using the workflow in OJS, but we have a large number of, or like a couple of journals that are not using the workflow in OJS to kind of go through like all the different steps of getting or reaching to publication. So if we had like 100% of our journals using that workflow, I think we would be able to better assess like the efficiencies there. The fact that we have some journals that actively choose to be like, okay, I'm going to use something like Submittable to accept like submissions from students, like they're using different systems outside of OJS, and then they're just using OJS as a place for the final copy to live. Kind of, I guess, like gives us like some information based on our observations of working with the different journals too, like seeing where there's some inefficiencies there. But it looks like in the chat we have some E's, we have a couple of F's, which is fine. So a lot of people based their evaluation on observations, which is definitely something that we've done. Lots of E's. I love this. I thought we would get more like surveys just because that feels like something that folks usually send out, or rubrics and things of that nature. So this is exciting to see. Rachel, do you want to move on
Yeah,
to
let's go ahead.
discussing more? Okay.
All right, so we're going to move on to the meat of our model. It's the action portion, what we did to evaluate our different journals. So I'm going to start with evaluating our active journals. We created a basic rubric for evaluating criteria based on the 4 general categories from the LPC ethical framework that we mentioned earlier. Those 4 general categories are values-based, diversity, community-oriented, and available to all. We created the rubric in order to grade our current list of active journals and their alignment with our institutional values. And the rubric has the following point categories: exceeds expectations, meets expectations, approaching, not yet meeting, and then not applicable. The decision to offload, or in our case, archive, because we don't actually get rid of anything, we'll just say it's inactive. A journal can be made based on how the journal scores using our rubric. Ultimately, the decision would be up to the librarian grading the journal, because as we all know, there are outside factors that determine things. For example, if a journal scores excellent in 3 categories, but needs improvement in 1, that 1 low score would probably not be enough to move the journal to an archived area. Similarly, if you reach out to the editors of the journal in question and they're easy to contact or work with, if they seem willing to put in the effort to improve their journal to meet our criteria, then obviously you should give them a second chance. So in the end, you can use this rubric to help inform your decisions, but the final decision would be up to you. And then on the next slide, we have a QR code and a link, and I'll copy the link and put it in the chat as well. We've made our rubric available to you guys through the QR code or the tiny URL, and you are welcome to take a moment and check it for yourselves. You can download it if you want, now or later, if you decide that it's something that you would like to use for yourself. I thought that I had it that anybody could access it. Give me just a second. I'm gonna generate a new. Okay. If it's asking you to log in, try this one that I've put there. Otherwise, I'll, if that's still not working, I'll work on this so that we can go ahead and move on, and I'll make sure that everybody gets access to this rubric.
It's like it worked. Yay.
It works? Great. Okay, so you guys can check out the rubric. You should be able to view it. Hopefully you should be able to download it, but I'll go ahead and move on. All right, so here Olivia found a fancy way to input a GIF scrolling through our rubric. So thanks, Olivia, for that. You can see that we've color-coded the rubric for each of the 4 framework categories. Each category has separate line items that can be valued up to the 3 points, with an added option for not applicable in certain cases. And then we've also listed every active journal we have so that we can compare their scores. And then the next slide. After developing this rubric, we tested it with 3 of our active journals and got varying results. The journals included 1 fully institutional journal that's through one of our schools, an outside journal that has ties to the university through faculty, and a student-led creative works journal. At the moment, I believe the highest a journal can score on our rubric is 39. It kind of bothers me that we didn't make it an even 40, but that's okay. The tested journals each scored 27 points for the institutional journal, 19 for the outside journal, and 15 for the student journal. While their scores were widely varied between categories, all 3 journals got 0s for accessibility. This is an issue with, I think, every single journal outside of our law reviews right now, and we're hoping that we'll be able to address that issue before all of the new web ADA requirements hit us next April. If they still hit us next April. The outside journal scored a mix of 1s and 2s across the board, while the institutional journal scored 3s in almost all categories except cooperativity. I don't know if that's a word, I might have just made it up, but a partial reason that the student journal scored so low is that I was unable to score them in quite a few categories based on the fact that they are creative, and at the time, the rubric, the first version of the rubric we made was more scientific or research-based, and also because they haven't published yet since I took my position. So I was unable to score them, and that is why we ended up including a not applicable section for journals. Many questions and insights were brought up during our test evaluation with our rubric, including the following. What do we do with a journal that doesn't use metrics? How much does one difficult person on an editorial team weigh against the full journal itself? How are we supposed to know how they treat each other during the publication process if we are not involved in it? How are we supposed to evaluate a journal if we haven't dealt with them publishing yet? And this last one was mostly for me, again, because many of our journals have not published since I started. Most of them publish in the summer or fall. Because of some of these questions, we ended up including the not applicable categories so that their journals aren't negatively affected. In this case, you could subtract 3 points for each not applicable use to give them a better score so they don't end up sad like the 15 that our student journal got. Next slide. Moving on to the guidelines created for taking on new journals, we decided to create a decision tree that would help increase our publishing output while also making sure we are not overextending ourselves. The decision tree would include questions like, will they be uploading and publishing on their own? Will they be using the OJS workflow, or will they be using something else? How much support from the library will they need, i.e. time from our 5 people? Are they connected to the university? And if not, are they connected to a scholarly society? Are they financially transparent? And do their values and policies align with our policies? Of course, just like with offloading or archiving old active journals, the indecision will ultimately lie with how the librarian is feeling. And then on the next slide, you can see our decision tree. So I'll just walk you through it real quick, and I am happy to also send this on its own. But we've decided that because of how much work we're already doing, we will not be accepting any journals that are not affiliated with IU Indianapolis. So right off the bat, if you're not affiliated with IU Indianapolis, unfortunately, the answer is going to be no. The second, if they are affiliated with our university, we'll ask, are they charging APCs or are they doing embargoes? We have also changed our terms of agreement to say no more embargoes. We had a couple old active journals that had a 2-year embargo. We've decided from now on just a blanket no on those. So if you have APCs or embargoes, we're not going to accept. The next, will you be utilizing or will you be publishing and uploading on your own, or will you need help? If you are going to be publishing and uploading everything on your own, some of our journals do this, which may be surprising. I'm not sure how other institutions, if you guys have that or not, but we do have quite a few journals that do everything on their own. You're going to do everything on your own? Great. Welcome to the club. If you're going to need help, then we're going to evaluate how much of our help you're going to need. I wasn't sure quite how much time, since again, I know I keep saying this, I'm new. I don't know what a normal amount of time for journal maintenance is. So for this process, I said more than a week or 40 FTE hours. If it's going to be more than that, then we're not going to accept you. If it's less than that, we'll move on. Does it align with our values? Obviously, if it does not, we're not going to take you. If it does, we'll ask the final question. Are we interested? Is this going to bring us joy? If yes, then we'll move to the accepted. So the next slide.
Oh, sorry, Rachel, there's
No, go
some
ahead.
good questions in the chat. So we have, do you have an editorial group to decide which new journals to take? And then how many new journals do you take on each year?
Do we have an editorial group? The editorial group, I believe, is me and Olivia and Jere. There's not an official group. It's just based on how we're feeling and how much time we think we can give to it. As Olivia said earlier, our journal publishing service has been closed for the past few years. My predecessor accepted 2 journals before he left, and we never fully officially reopened our publishing program, but we have accepted 1 more journal since I started because of factors outside of our control. For example, it was recommended by our dean that we take it on. So I can't say how many new journals we would take on each year just because we haven't had it open yet. Olivia, do you want to add anything?
I don't have anything to add. I think you've summed it up pretty well. There's another question in the chat, but do we want to run through these final slides and then save it for the end? Okay.
Yeah, let's run through.
Okay.
So I'll go through the testing. We tested the decision tree with our new journals. Again, I wasn't really able to make a decision because this one was kind of decided for us, but the most recent journal that we accepted, if we had been able to go through the decision tree, we probably would have accepted it anyway. Like it said, we will be prioritizing institutional connections, and we updated our terms of agreement, meaning if anybody says that they need to embargo or have APCs, then that's an automatic no. Olivia, did you have something you were going to say? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. And then the next slide was just a couple hypothetical journals that I ran through our decision tree. So the first journal, let's say it's affiliated with IU, so it moves on. It does not charge APCs, moves on, but they're not going to upload and publish on their own. It will take more than 40 hours FTE, which means that because of our current workload, we will not accept that journal. Hypothetical journal number 2, it's affiliated with IU. It does not charge APCs, and they're going to be fully uploading and publishing on their own. We love it, so yes, we're going to accept it. where does it was recommended by the dean fall in this decision tree? I'm gonna say it brings us joy because we keep our jobs.
So do we want to move on to our last poll, Rachel?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so we want to end with our final poll asking how comfortable folks are with letting things go. So Rachel's gonna throw the options that we have for you in the chat. And we try to have fun with it. So we have option A, which is I'll never let go. Think Rose from Titanic, 1997. And then we have option B, Let It Go from Elsa, Frozen, 2013. And then C is undecided. All right, we've got a couple of answers coming into the chat. Lots of C's. We've got a few A's. I think I see 2 B's.
While people are answering that poll, there was a question, how do you factor in snowballing time commitment of all of our current journals when considering to add new journals? That I think would also fall under the joy portion. The joy portion is going to be shouldering a lot of the heavy lifting here, I think. We all, I'm sure, have difficulty deciding when enough is enough and when too much is too much. And luckily, between me, Olivia, and our coworker, Jere, we will be able to talk to each other to ultimately determine whether or not we think we can physically handle another journal being added on.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing that I can add to that is I think me and Jere have this pie in the sky idea that the Center for Digital Scholarship supports a lot of initiatives. And when Rachel, goes out on vacation, she shouldn't feel like obligated that she needs to like help a journal when she's out of the office. So we're trying to figure out ways as like a whole, so all the librarians and the staff members in the center of how to better support each other in the work that we do and pick up some of the workload as we continue to like see initiatives grow and wane. But I don't know, we're still kind of thinking through that process, just because that would be really helpful, I think, in the long term as we move forward. And I think given time, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up before we take questions or any more questions. So our final poll really kind of feeds into the wrap up that we want to do today. So thank you all for answering that last one. So we just want to highlight that we are still figuring things out. And we recognize that when Rachel joined us, we were juggling a lot, even though our journal program was on pause, and it was time to take a step back and just prioritize the work moving forward. I know I have a hard time with this, but we like to say, don't be afraid of saying no. If there's a project that needs your support and you can't provide that support or the full support, and you feel that strain that comes with the limited resources that you may have, it's okay to say no, which is easier said than done. And then this last one, we are really trying very hard to figure this out and bake it into our practices moving forward at our library, especially within the Center for Digital Scholarship. But we are trying to leave as much room for joy for our staff members and the folks that work in the library. And I think with that, we'll end it there. Rachel, is there anything else you want to add before we take questions?
No, I think that about sums it up.
Perfect. Well, fabulous. Thank you all for being a wonderful audience, and thank you for bearing with us with our difficulties with the polling. I'm glad folks participated in the chat. So again, thank you so much.